40 years ago, I came out as a lesbian, and now as a member of the UK Parliament, the gayest parliament in the world, I still face lesbophobia from some quarters. I'm pleased the report asks Member States to celebrate International Lesbian Visibility Day.
In the Council of Europe's Agora building, there is currently an exhibition promoting sexual perversion with illustration of children and animals. It's a shame, it's a scandal, and I demand that not freedom of speech, but such exhibitions should be banned.
First of all, I would like to make it clear that I deeply disagree with my fellow MP, Mr. Toroczkai said, and I am convinced that does not reflect the opinion of the majority of the Hungarian people either.
Well, it was quite a calm debate. It was one that was constructive, apart from one colleague who spewed his hatred within this hemicycle.
Szeretettel köszöntök mindenkit ismét innen Strasbourgból, az Európa Tanács parlamentjének épületéből, és éppen túl vagyunk egy parázs vitán megint, amelynek a címe az arról szólt, hogy hogyan tudjuk megelőzni az erőszakot és a diszkriminációt a leszbikus, biszexuális és queer nők ellen Európában. Ez már megint egy nagyon fontos téma volt, ugye minden ülésszakon az LMBTQ kérdés az ugye ott van napirenden, viszont én kihasználtam a lehetőséget arra, hogy tiltakozzak az ellen, az iszonyatosan botrányos kiállítás ellen, amely most jelenleg így zajlik az Európa Tanács Strasbourg épületében, az Agora nevű épületben. Egy olyan kiállítást láthatunk, ahol a pornográfia, pedofília és a zoofília is megjelenik, ami egészen elképesztő. Ez ellen tiltakoztam, nyilván parázsvita alakult ki, és szembesítettem az Európa Tanácsot, az európai képviselőket azzal, hogy mit tesznek Európával, és hogyan nem védik meg az európai gyermekeket. Ebbe a vitába nyilvánvalóan tőlem elhatárolódva a magyar nép nevében Arató Gergely, a másik magyarországi képviselő, politikus, a DK képviselője is bekapcsolódott. Tekintsék meg most akkor ezt a vitát.
Dear colleagues, Mr. President, I welcome this report in its entirety. It is well written and balanced and covers a whole range of ways LGBTQ women are sidelined, targeted and face a whole range of discrimination. 40 years ago, I came out as a lesbian, and now as a member of the UK Parliament, the gayest parliament in the world, I still face lesbophobia from some quarters, and particularly over the last few years, targeted by anti-gender movements. It's beyond disappointing that despite major progress from our LGBTI communities, in recent years we have seen frequent attacks on LGBTQ women, on our right to exist and attempts to roll back the rights we have fought so hard for. I'm pleased the report asks Member States to celebrate International Lesbian Visibility Day. Last year we held a debate in the UK Parliament on Lesbian Visibility Day, the first in the UK. Following that debate, I faced some awful homophobic remarks simply for being open about my sexuality. I was called a nonce, had serious threats and received a barrage of abuse. This abuse is designed to silence women. We must instead use our platforms to call it out and to highlight, as this report does very well, the increase in sexism and misogyny that LGBTQ women face. Let me also be very clear. The intersectional approach of this report is exactly what is needed. As a cis lesbian woman, I refuse to be pitted against my trans siblings. We must not be distracted by the fabricated conflict between trans women and lesbians, which only serves to divide and undermine the fight for equality within our communities. We must also not fall prey to the false narrative portraying trans people as a threat to women. The vile abuse and terminology currently being used against the trans community is the same hate as the lesbian and gay community faced back in the 1980s. I welcome the report calling on Member States to ensure LGBTQ women have the rights and protections they need and deserve, and I'm pleased that the report talks about how LGBTQ women are portrayed and our diverse profiles. We are here to be fabulous in our differences and to be seen, to let others know that they can be their true selves. It's important that we don't forget the challenges that lesbians still face. So I would like to thank the rapporteur, and I hope that you all support the report. Thank you.
On behalf of ALDE, Damien Cotier.
Merci, Monsieur.
And the resolution is particularly right in stressing that laws which are so-called anti-propaganda laws should be repealed when in fact they seek to discredit another form of normality, which may not be majority normality, but it's nonetheless normality. It's not about promoting ideologies, as we've just heard, but simply recalling that there are other forms of normality, and that's especially important for young people. The rapporteur is also right in calling for zero tolerance regarding crimes and hate speech against LGBTQ people and women in particular. And she's right to call for legal protection, which is specific, and equality of rights. And there's a whole arsenal of measures which our states can take here. Several parliaments, in particular, have made progress in this direction, with prohibition of so-called conversion therapies, which are basically unacceptable treatments in countries such as our own, or indeed in any country. And it's therefore important to ban them and ensure they're dealt with. The rapporteur is also right in calling for recognition of parental rights for same-sex couples. There are various ways this can be done. Many countries recognize those rights. Others still have some way to go in this field. Sometimes it means recognition of marriage for all, sometimes a civil partnership, sometimes other forms, but progress must be made to that end.
And now it is László Toroczkai.
Thank you, Mr. President. Before we discuss the situation of lesbian, bisexual and queer women in Europe, let's talk about something else related to this topic. Let's talk about the scandal that is currently unfolding here in the Council of Europe. I will share my views soon on the report entitled Preventing and Combating Violence and Discrimination Against Lesbian, Bisexual and Queer Women in Europe, because I have read this report. But first, let me tell you that I believed that the Council of Europe was actually about core values as it is proclaimed everywhere. That it is about human rights, about the protection of Europe's ethnic minorities, such as the Hungarian minority in Transcarpathia and Transylvania, and about the protection of the most vulnerable group in society, the children. But no, that's not what the Council of Europe is about right now. Children's rights are barely dealt with. Instead, we focus almost every session on LGBTQ lobby issues, just as this report is about the interest of a group of the certain sexual orientation. However, the biggest scandal is what the Council of Europe is doing now. In the Council of Europe's Agora building, there is currently an exhibition promoting sexual perversion with illustration of children and animals. It's a shame. As for the report, it mentions a few isolated cases from France, Portugal, Italy, but this is not a problem for the whole of societies in Europe. So the report's conclusions is therefore incorrect in this sense. The report highlights that it wants zero tolerance of hate speech, so-called hate speech, against the LGBTQ community. This is in fact a restriction on the freedom of speech, and it has already been implemented. It's in fact about censorship. You want to silence those who, in defense of the children, dare to criticize this lobby, which is getting stronger and more violent. Actually, it is not lesbian, bisexual, queer women who are at risk in Europe, but children. Among other things, because of the propaganda that has now been presented in an exhibition here at the Council of Europe, this exhibition, this is a pornographic, pedophile and zoophile exhibition. It's a scandal, and I demand that not freedom of speech, but such exhibitions should be banned. Thank you very much. It's shame on you.
Dear colleagues, it is freedom of speech that we have to enjoy here. And let me remind you, dear colleague, that it is hundreds of reports about children, about those who are in need, and weak people who are living in our member states. So I didn't interrupt you, but I would like you to reconsider the word scandal. I think it is a totally different meaning that we give, unless my English are not as good as yours. So let's go on. Gergely Arato is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First of all, I would like to make it clear that I deeply disagree with my fellow MP, Mr. Toroczkai said, and I am convinced that does not reflect the opinion of the majority of the Hungarian people either. But if this unfortunate speech has already been made, it is just the right time to talk about the responsibility of the politicians. Because words do have consequences. In every case, we find that if minority groups are stigmatized for political purposes, this emboldens those who can only confront society's problem in the language of violence. This happened in Hungary as well, when the number of the reported attacks against LGBTQ people increased after the government and the far right put the fight against the so-called gender propaganda and LGBTQ lobby on its banner. But there are such news from Georgia, Romania, and other member states too. If rhetoric against a minority becomes a political weapon, it is always a green signal for violence. Of course, I respect that someone has a different opinion on any moral or political issue due to religious or personal beliefs. And I believe that the reasonable and calm discussion are more beneficial for all concerned. But there is a very clear limit. Respect for human dignity. The stigmatization, shaming, dehumanization, and exclusion of others are not only contrary to the basic ethical standard, including Christian ethics, but also pose a direct and strong threat to the social harmony and peace. Yes, hateful words are important, and the traders of hate have responsibility. That is why I would like to thank the rapporteur for this report, which draws attention to the situation of a particularly vulnerable group, LGBTQ women, and the violence they face. Because Democrats also have a responsibility. We must speak up and say no to hate
And
and violence.
that concludes the list of speakers. So I call now Madame Fresco-Rolfo to reply. You have 3 minutes.
Ça marche? Oui, merci, Monsieur.
Thank you very much indeed, President. Well, it was quite a calm debate. It was one that was constructive, apart from one colleague who spewed his hatred within this hemicycle. I'd like to thank you, President, for what you said afterwards, calming things down. Now, I've heard a number of comments about the fact that not everyone necessarily agrees with everything, but I think the debate has been very constructive. That's the most important thing of all. With regard to inclusive education, which is covered in this report, it's not a means of propaganda. It's a means of enabling all children to understand and to perhaps accept sexual orientation of other people. The aim is not to promote a given sexual orientation. The aim is simply to explain and make people understand that we can all live together and accept differences. I very much appreciated what Dame Muti said when he said society is here to love all its children, all its adults. The rights of children, well, I mentioned them in my report because this is ever so important. Of course, you can have heterosexual parents, homosexual parents, but the rights of children are hugely important. We need to protect them, enable them to live with both parents, and there need to be legislative advances made on this front. We need to continue to work on this. With regard to responsibility, well, yes, words have consequences. If we look at violent words and the consequences they have, I don't want women to have to deny their sexuality. I want them to fully experience and live their sexuality in this world. Thank you very much indeed.